In this video, I want to highlight the origins, versatility, fusion genres and subgenres of Calypso. Instruments involved in Calypso include Djembe, iya, Kondoa, Omele, go, ka, Orisha, bass, Bongos, Congos and Conga drums, Tamboo bamboo, scratcher, Shak, iron cap, Cowbell, Drumset, Timbales, Trumpets, Trombones, Tubas, Saxophones, Acoustic, electric and bass guitar, piano, bottle and spoon, Crix and Steelpan. Some rhythms which originated from Kaiso are gospel, Lavwey, Congo, Bongo, Pique, Rainbeat, Carib or Ashanti, calendar, Dodunde, Cuckoo, Tobago reel, Tobago jig, Bele Tin-ni-neh, Conga, Cowbell, Strum, Postman Strum. Singing and rapping styles of Calypso, vocal melody, vocal rhythms which are called vocables, freestyle, crowd tradition, storytelling, extempo, poetry, spoken word, and written. Types or styles of topics of Calypso are called society, political, economical, allusion, double entendre, relationships, humor, party, carnival, inspirational, wonder, love, romance. It's just some of the topics. Fusion genres of Calypso are chutney, parang, salsa, samba, merengue, rumba, bachata, momba, mambo, palo, gospel US, soul, blues, funk, jazz, classical. The years just represent the times that it would have fused with Calypso. Subgenres of Calypso are Extempo or Calypso war in the 1940s, Rapso of the 1970s. Subgenres of Calypso are Extempo, Calypso war in 1940s. The years just represent the timing these genres originated. Some of them are Extempo or Calypso war in 1940s. The years next to these subgenres represent the years it originated. The years in these subgenres represent the time it originated. Extempo or Calypso war in the 1940s, Rapso in the 1970s, Soca in 1971, Jamu 1977, traditional pop music 1920s, or I like to call it imitation calypso, pop rock 1954, pop music 1955, which is obviously an extension of traditional pop music, Latin pop 1950s or Latin calypso, Europop 1960s, Eurobeat 1980s, Eurodance 1980s, Asian pop music, or even Mediterranean pop music, which include Asian pop music include Chinese, Japanese, Korean. Mediterranean pop music include Indian, Tamil, or Egyptian music as well. Mento in the 1940s, Ska also in 1940s, Rocksteady in 1966, Guitar Calypso, which is also Guitar Calypso, Reggae in 1964, Dub music in 1969, Electronic Calypso, Dub music which is Electronic Calypso, Dub music 1969 which is Electronic Calypso as well, Dancehall in 1970s, Hip Hop also in 1970s, Contemporary R&B 1980s, which is also Calypso and Blues, Afrobeat 1960s, or I like to call it Afrobeat or Afrobeats Calypso. Afrobeats also came out in the early 2000s. Spooge 1960s, Disco 1960s, EDM 1960s, Condensed Calypso 1970s, House Music 1980s, Reggaeton 1990s or Espanol Calypso. Anything to do with pop is obviously an extension of pop music. Pop is just a shorter term for popular calypso. So anything that have pop in it is obviously a subgenre of calypso as well. Because pop is not in itself is not a type of music. It's not a genre and it's not a genre of music. Rocksteady was invented by a man called Nolan Tate from San Fernando, Trinidad. So that means he's also responsible for influencing, for bringing about other for also inspiring others to make subgenres of rocksteady, including reggae, dub, and dancehall and hip-hop as well. And with the influence of dub music in contemporary R&B. And even when talking about other subgenres like EDM, he might also be responsible for that as well, because that is also an extension of dub music. Kaiso originated from among the Efik, Ibibios, Igbo, Yoruba and Hausa people of Nigeria, and also the people of Mali and the Kingdom of Congo. It was brought over to Trinidad and Tobago by the captive Africans who worked on sugar plantations and was stripped of all connections to their homeland and family, and not allowed to talk to each other. They used Kaiso to mock the slave masters and rebel, also to communicate with each other so the slave owners would not understand. Many early Kaisos were sung in French Creole, and the people would also gather in Kaiso tents, where a crowd or lead singer known as a jelly storyteller, sage or poet would lead them in song, a person whose role is to preserve the historical narratives and genealogies of their communities, sometimes through song in a call and response manner while accompanying themselves on a stringed instrument, usually the kora. Patois or Trinidadian French Creole was the original language of the Kaiso music. Kaisos Kaiso songs are generally narrative in form and often have a cleverly concealed political subtext. Kaiso performers are also known as Kaisonians. As Kaiso developed, the role of the crowd became known as a chantuel and eventually Kaisonian. In Barbados, Kaiso refers to a form of stage-presented Kaiso, such as at the Crop-Over Festival. The term Kaiso is said to derive from an Ibibio Efik word meaning "get on", used as an exclamation such as "Bravo, let us join". It can also mean "let us be friends" in Igbo and Nambra dialect, plus in the Igbo language, "Ka Anyị Sonye" means "let's join". The word is often used synonymously with Calypso today, but often with the connotation that the former is more authentic, showing approval consistent with its original meaning. The word can also be found in an Igbo name, Kai Solochukwu or Solo Kaiso. Kai Solochukwu means "let's respect or follow God" in the Igbo language. Igbo and Ibibio's influence and etymology. The Ibibio and Igbo people and the origins of Limbo and Kaiso. The Bibios and Igbo and supposedly other tribes would gather, plan to pose on opposite ends, and place a bar across. They would take turns individually dancing and negotiating their bodies to go underneath the bar and exit on the opposite end without upsetting it. No matter how low the bar was, the accompanying chant used to egg on and lead the dancer to a successful exit, went something like this: Kaiso, 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 meaning go forward, go ahead or more. The dance was later named Limbo. Ka means go, Isu means forward. Kaiso therefore means go forward in the Ibibio language of southeastern Nigeria. The Ibibios and Igbo people who were kidnapped from the Niger Delta and Calabar, shipped across the vast Atlantic Ocean, and subsequently enslaved in the Caribbean islands of Trinidad and Tobago, brought their music, language, and traditions with them. In slavery, their customs and traditions got interwoven into the larger slave culture of the area, but the word Kaiso, meaning go forward, go ahead or more, survived. It later became the name of Trinidad and Tobago's It later became the name of Trinidad and Tobago's most popular music. Kaiso evolved into Calypso and that which eventually evolved into Rapso and that too evolved into soca music. The very fact that the word Kaiso was common and accepted enough to be used for naming a dance or song suggests that the Ibibio and Igbo slave population of that area was strong and socially influential. The calendar and its Congo influence. The calendar and its accompanying drum rhythms were predominantly a Congo input into Trinidad culture and can be concluded from the significant number of Congo names among remembered stickmen and popular stick yards, and from the emotional involvement with stick fight culture of Congo descendants interviewed in the 1970s. In contrast with the attachment of Yoruba, Rala, and Hausa descendants to religious ceremonies, the calendar drum was transported almost bodily into Kaiso even without modification. This rhythm can also be heard in Calypso, Rapso, and Soca today. Calypso terminology. It is thought that the name Calypso was originally Kaiso. There is also a Trinidadian term Cariso that means old-time calypsos. The term calypso is recorded from the 1930s onwards. Alternatively, the insert for the rough guide to calypso and soca, published by World Network Music, favors John Cowley's arguments. In Carnival, Canbully, and Calypso, traditions in the making, that the word might be a corruption of the French "carouse", and through the process of patois and anglicization became Calypso and then finally Calypso. However, Cowley also notes that the first mention of the word calypso is given in a description of the dance in 1882 by Abbé Massey. The term the term calypso arose The term calypso arose after the art form had been in existence for some time. Initially, the majority of songs were sung in patois. However, during the turn of the century, when people of Trinidad and Tobago were struggling with the fading of the French patois and the emerging dominance of English, many terms were simply anglicized. Thus, the language of the music began to change, and according to some, so too did its name. There are several theories and there, there are in fact several theories and controversies surrounding the origin of the word. This discussion will focus on out, versions outlined in the works of Daniel Crowley, Raymond Quevedo, Errol Hill, and Hollis Liverpool. Nobody seriously contends that it has anything to do with the calypso of Greek mythology, though one commenter also reviewing the various possible origins and conceding that the name calypso is a misnomer and bears no direct relation whatever whatsoever to the folk music of Trinidad itself, does venture to add, it is still not certain that the English or US citizen coming to Trinidad, hearing the expression used for the folk music and feeling its enchanting effects, did not misinterpret the word to mean calypso of Greek mythology. Kaiso did have origins from Africa, so we must take note the possibility of stolen identity, just as when Caucasians went to Africa during slavery, most notably in the 1600s, they would have destroyed many statues, home sites, etc., and stolen their items and identity, and attributed a lot of African things to their identity, including home chores, mats, scriptures, and Kaiso, which then became Calypto and then Calypso, and was taken to mean a Greek goddess as a replacement. The following are the main theories put forward over the years on the origins of the term Calypso. It came from the word carrieto, meaning a joyous song, which itself evolved into cariso. It originated from the French word "carousel", which was originally the archaic word "carus", meaning a drink. Party or festivity. This word was later transformed into other variants, namely calypso, calypso, and kaiso. It may have come from the Venezuelan Spanish word "calizo", which referred to a topical local song "calypso", and has similar meaning in Saint Lucia. The word "carrizo" also refers to a topical song, but mainly in the Virgin Islands. It was derived from the West African Hausa term "Kaiso" itself, a corruption of "kaito", an expression of approval and encouragement similar to "bravo". The last version is the derivation that has found the most favor, hence we find Raymond Quevedo, the knowledgeable calypsonian of the early half of the 20th century, claiming that Kaiso was the first term he knew. It then evolved into calypso via Calypso, Russo, and Wusso. The last term, Kaiso, has survived alongside the derivation calypso, which according to Herrera first appeared as the term donating a Trinidad Carnival song only in 1900s. Only in 1900. Kaiser is still used to show appreciation for a calypso that is well composed and executed. Thus, Quevedo's statement about Kaiso being used to describe the song when sung, as well as a means of expressing a aesthetic satisfaction over what was, in the opinion of the audience, a particularly excellent Kaiso, is still valid today. The dual existence of an original word alongside the etymological derivative "kaiso" is nothing new. Hence, Kaiso, in addition to its main role as indicator of appreciation and approval, is at times also interchangeably for calypso. In such a case, it has the connotation of genuine calypso. Recently, there has been in some circles a favoring of the term Caisonian to designate one who sings genuine calypsos, as opposed to calypsonian but be that as it may, the term calypso, as we know it, is now well entrenched in contemporary vocabulary, as evidenced by its definition in the concise Oxford Dictionary. Calypso, a kind of West Indian music or song in syncopated African rhythm, typically with words improvised on a topical theme. It originated from the French patois word "carousser", which was originally the archaic French word "carouse", meaning a drinking party or festivity. The word was later transformed into other variants, namely Cariso, Calypso, and Kaiso. It may have come from the Venezuelan Spanish word "Calypso", which referred to a topical local song. Calypso has a similar meaning in Saint Lucia. The word Cariso also refers to a topical song but mainly in the Virgin Islands. It was derived from the West African Usa term Kaiso itself, a corruption of Kaito, an expression of approval and encouragement similar to bravo. The last version is the derivation that has found the most favor. Hence we find Raymond Quevedo, the knowledgeable Calypsonian of the early halves of the 20th century, claiming that Kaiso was the first term he knew. It then evolved into Calypso via Calyso, Russo, and Luso. The last term Kaiso has evolved and has survived alongside its derivation Calypso, which according to Errol Hill, first appeared as the term denoting the Trinidad Carnival song only in 1900. Kaiso is still used to show appreciation for a calypso that is well composed and executed. Thus Quevedo's statement about Kaiso being used to describe the song when sung as well as a means of expressing ecstatic satisfaction over what was, in the opinion of the audience, a particularly excellent Kaiso is still valid today. The dual existence of an original word alongside its etymological derivative Kaiso is nothing new. Hence Kaiso, in addition to its main role as indicator of appreciation and approval, is at times also used interchangeably for Calypso. In such a case, it has the connotation of genuine Calypso. Recently, there has been in some circles a favouring of the term Kaisonian as to designate one who sings genuine calypsos as opposed to Calypsonian. But that be that as it may, the term calypso as we know it, now well entrenched in contemporary vocabulary, as evidence by its definition in the concise Oxford Dictionary. A calypso, a kind of West Indian music or song in syncopated African rhythm, typically with words improvised on a topical theme. As English replaced Patois, French-based as the dominant language, Calypso migrated into English, and in so doing it attracted more attention from the government. It allowed the masses to challenge the doings of the unelected governor and legislative council, and the elected town councils of Port of Spain and San Fernando. Calypso continued to play an important role in political expression. Modern Calypso, however, can and stick fighting influence. Modern Calypso, however, began in the 19th century as a fusion of disparate elements ranging from the masquerade song Lavwey, French Creole ballet, and the calendar stick fighting chantwell. Calypso's early rise was closely connected with the adoption of carnival by Trinidadian slaves, including Congolese drumming and the music masquerade processions. The French brought carnival to Trinidad, and calypso competitions at carnival grew in popularity, especially after the abolition of slavery in 1834. Stick fighting calendar. Calendar, also spelled calendar or calendar, is a martial art as well as a kind of folk music and war dance in the Caribbean, which arose in the 1720s. It was brought to the Caribbean by Africans in the transatlantic slave trade and is based on native African combat dances. Calendar is a kind of stick fighting commonly seen practiced during Trinidad and Tobago Carnival. It is the national martial art of Trinidad and Tobago. French planters with their slaves, free-colors, and mulattoes from neighboring islands of Grenada, Guadeloupe, Martinique, and Dominica migrated to Trinidad during the escalade of population in 1783. Carnival had arrived with the French, and slaves who could not participate found a parallel celebration which eventually became known as Canterbury between 1858 and 1884. After the emancipation of slavery in 1833, a lead vocalist or chanterelle would sing call and response chants called Lavweys, lionizing and cheering on the stick fighters. Their carnival songs are considered to be derived from calendar chants and Lavweys. This form of music gradually evolved into modern calypso. Before the emancipation from slavery and its integration into carnival, calendar was used as a type of performance to provide ways of entertainment for slaves. Once the French came to Trinidad, stick fighters were no longer known as stickmen but as bois-men, bois meaning stick in French. There were different factors involved in stick fighting, including a costume that the performers would have to wear and the guiles or arenas they would fight in. There are also special rituals that are done in the guile before the fight starts that include different ceremonial songs. Though it is more commonly practiced as a dance because of its violent outcome of stick fighting, its roots are still that of a martial art originating from Congo, and the stick fights still occur in Trinidad. They also have been formalized into annual carnival competitions. The origin of this tradition has also been related to Afro-Iberian brotherhoods and the Kalens. Elsewhere in the Caribbean, it is practiced in other parts of the Caribbean such as Martinique, Guadeloupe under various names such as Iagya, Tamaya, and Mayole. Calendar is one name assigned to the Afro-Caribbean form of stick fighting, as practiced in Haiti and entering the United States through the port of New Orleans. Similar forms of this martial art existed elsewhere in the Caribbean. For example, in Barbados it is commonly referred to as stick licking or stick science. In Louisiana, the well-known Cajun song "Allons danser Colinda" is about a Cajun boy asking a girl named Colinda to do a risque dance with him, probably derived from the calendar dance, which was reported to have been performed in New Orleans by Afro-Caribbean slaves brought to Louisiana. Dancing the calendar is also referred to in one of the Louisiana writer Kate Chopin's most famous stories, From Bayou Folk in 1894. La Belle Zoraide, La Belle Zoraide, which stresses the strong Afro-Caribbean presence in Louisiana. Calypso development. The subject of a calypso text is usually witty and satiric, and is a local and topical event of political and social import, and the tone is one of allusion, mockery, and double entendre. The calypso tradition, popularized abroad in the 1930s, dates to the early 19th century and was originally called Kaiso or Cariso. During the carnival season before Lent, groups of slaves led by popular singers or chantwells wandered through the streets singing and improvising veiled lyrics directed toward unpopular political figures. The poetic form follows that of a ballad. The four-line refrains, eight-line strophes standards, the simple rhyme scheme is amply compensated for by highly imaginative original use of language. The singer-poet who adopts a catchy stage name, the mighty spoiler, Lord Melody Atalahan, incorporates Spanish, Creole, and African phrases into a low-blow idiom utilizing newly invented colloquial expressions such as "bubble" meaning graft, "pakuti" meaning unfaithfulness. The exaggeration of local speech patterns, distorting the normal accentuation of the text, is matched by offbeat syncopated rhythm in the music, a familiar calypso trademark. The calypso singer either sets his verse to a stock melody or invents a tune of his own. Favorite accompanying instruments are the shak, guitar, quattro, and tamboo bamboo. Bam. Since World War II, tuned oil drums played together in orchestras called steel bands have been very popular. Calypso recordings: the first identifiably calypso genre song was recorded in 1912 called "Mango Float" by Lavwey Strings Band while visiting New York City. In 1914, the second calypso recording, including the first song in English, was called "Iron Duke in the Land" and was done by Chantwell Julian Whiterose, better known as the Iron Duke and famous gymnastic fighter. Jules Sims will also record vocal calypsos. The majority of these calypsos of the World War I era were instrumentals by Lavwey and Lionel Belasco. Perhaps due to the constraints of the wartime economy, and no recordings of note were produced until the late 1920s and early 1930s, when the golden era of calypso would cement the style, form, and phrasing of the music. Calypso evolved into a way of spreading news around Trinidad. Political figures, journalists, and public figures often debated the content of each song. Many islanders considered these songs the most reliable news source. Calypsonians pushed the boundaries of free speech as their lyrics spread news of any topic relevant to island life, including speaking out against political corruption. Even with this censorship, calypsos continue to push the boundaries with Calypsos continue to push the boundaries with a variety of ways, slipping to, the variety of ways to slip songs past the scrutinizing eyes of the editor. Double entendre or double speak was one way, as was the practice of denouncing countries such as Germany and annexation of Poland and its annexation of Poland while making pointed references toward the colonial government's policies in Trinidad. Sex scandal, gossip, politics, local news, and insulting other Calypsonians with the order of the day in classic Calypso. The music sparked shock and outrage in moralistic sections of society. Countless recordings were dumped at sea in the name of censorship, although in truth rival US companies did this in the spirit of underhanded competition, claiming that the rivals' material was unfit for US consumption. Decca Records lost untold pressings in this manner, as did its rival RCA's Bluebird label. An entrepreneur named Eduardo de Sagomes played a significant role in spreading calypso in its early days. Sagomes, a Portuguese immigrant who owned a local music and phonograph equipment shop in Porto, Spain, promoted the genre and gave financial support to the local artists. In March 1934, he sent Roaring Lion and Attila the Hun to New York City to record. They became the first calypsonians to record abroad, bringing the genre out of the West Indies and into pop culture. Lord Invader was quick to follow, and stayed in New York City after a protracted legal case involving the theft of his song "Rum and Coca-Cola", a hit by the Andrews Sisters. He made his home there along with Wilmot Houdini, who became one of the great calypsonians of the US. One of the early forms of calypso is sans humanity. In this extempo or extemporaneous melody, calypsonians lyricize impromptu, commenting socially or insulting each other. Sans humanity or no mercy, which is again a reference to French influence. Calypso popularity. The first major stars of calypso started crossing over to new audiences worldwide in the late 1930s. Attila the Hun, Roaring Lion, and Lord Invader were the first, followed by Lord Kitchener, one of the longest-lasting calypso stars in history. He continued to release hit records until his death in 2000. 1934's "Rum and Coca-Cola" by the Andrews Sisters, a cover version of Lord Invader's song, became a US hit despite the song being very critical commentary on the explosion of prostitution, inflation, and other negative influences accompanying the US military bases in Trinidad at the time. Perhaps the most straightforward way to describe the focus of calypso is that it articulated itself as a form of protest against the authoritarian colonial culture which existed at the time. Soul shouter Gary U.S. Bongos released a Calypso album, Twist Up Calypso, on Legrand Records, shortly after returning home from his military post in Porto, Spain. Nati Kanagratman from Sri Lanka sang calypso-style songs in Tamil in 1968, which was a success and earned him the title "Father of Tamil Popular Music", since Baila rhythm was popular in Sri Lanka. Most of his songs were classified as Tamil Baila. Calypso social political influence. Calypso music has been used by Calypsonians to provide socio-political commentary prior to the independence of Trinidad and Tobago. Calypsonians would use their music to express the daily struggles of living in Trinidad, critique racial and economic inequalities, express opinions on social order, and voice overall concerns for those living on the island. During the colonial era, the African lower class used calypso to protest their poor economic situation and the discrimination which they were subjected to. Calypso music was frequently used as a form of musical protest. During the independence movements of Trinidad and Tobago through the early 1950s up until 1962, when the nation gained independence, calypso lyrics frequently critiqued British colonial rule. Lyrics were made to express feelings towards colonial rule as it being immoral and oppressive to Caribbean people. In particularly the independ during the movement to independence, calypso music would include common messages of a desire for independence, opposition to colonial rule, and empowerment for people of African descent. Neville Marcano, also known as Growling Tiger, became notorious for creating songs calling for independence of Trinidad and Tobago. In his song titled Abraham Lincoln's Speech at Gettysburg, Tiger used inspirations from Abraham Lincoln's famous Gettysburg Address to draw on values of liberty, equality, and democracy. These three principles parallel some of many ideas circulating during the nationalist movement in Trinidad and Tobago. His lyrics struck with those in support of an independent Trinidadian nation, hoping to instill similar principles in his own free nation. Lord Kitchener, a largely known Calypsonian, became noted for his politically critical lyrics in his music. Kitchener used calypso to shed light on the grievances of the Windrush generation, a generation of Caribbean families migrating from the islands to England in response to increased labor demands after World War II. Kitchener's song 1948, "Windrush", was written in two versions. The first version gained more popularity as the lyrics expressed gratitude and appreciation for British colonial rule. However, a second version found greater popularity amongst Caribbean people themselves, as the lyrics convey the story of West Indian immigrants facing discrimination and cultural alienation while living in Britain. Although Kitchener's alternate version of "Windrush" did not gain as much commercial popularity, the duality of the two versions exemplify how calypso music was used as an outlet for social commentary. After Trinidad and Tobago gained independence in 1962, calypso music continued to be used as an outlet for political commentary, with Eric Williams serving as the first Prime Minister of an independent Trinidad and Tobago Calypsonian. Mighty Sparrow released the song "William the Conqueror", where he praises William's victory and prides the island in its newfound independence. Sparrow sings, Calypso music has also been used by politicians to promote political agendas through calypso competitions. The origins of calypso competitions date dates back to the early 19th century, post-emancipation, where formerly enslaved communities would hold calypso wars, showcasing their singing and dancing. Later in 1953, calypso competitions held the same showcasing nature, but became politicized as the People's National Movement took over as the main organizer of competitions. The PNM used the competitions to combat social and class divisions by attracting participants of varying social status to participate and attend the competitions. The idea was to claim a national cultural identity and promote national unity. Limbo origins. The limbo dates back to the mid to 1800s in Tobago. It achieved mainstream popularity during the 1950s. An alternate explanation of the name is suggested that the version of limbo The version of limbo performed in the 19th century Tobago was meant to symbolize slaves entering the galleys of a slave ship or spirit crossing over into the afterworld. Revival to popularity. Traditionally, the limbo game began at the lowest possible bar height and the bar was gradually raised, signifying an emergence from death into life. In its adaptation to the world of entertainment, troops began reversing the traditional order. According to 1956 newspaper report, the game was revived in 1944 by Edric Connor. It became a popular entertainment in Trinidad and adopted as a physical fitness exercise by US troops. In the 1950s, choreographer and player Julia Edwards added a number of features that are now considered standard, such as human bars formed by the limbs of other players and the use of fire in the performance of limbo. A film by Julia Andrews Trinidadian, the US Sandra Dumas, was released in 2010. It traces the evolution of limbo dancing and the contribution of Edwards to its popularity. Popularity. Limbo players generally move and respond to a number of specific Afro-Caribbean drum patterns. As limbo gained popularity as a tourist activity and a form of entertainment, pop music began using Caribbean rhythms to respond to the emerging craze in the United States. One example is the song "Limbo Rock", recorded by Chubby Checker, who became a number 2 charted hit on the Billboard Top 100, from which emerged a popular quote or chant that is associated with limbo. Checker also helped to popularize "How Low Can You Go?". Limbo was brought into mainstream by Trinidadian calypsonian Brigos Samuel Abrahams with his popular soca song "Limbo Break". Gameplay. Limbo is considered the unofficial national game of Trinidad and Tobago, which refers to itself as the land of limbo, steelpan or steel drums, and calypso. After a preparatory game, the player prepares and approaches the bar, lowering and leaning back their body while balancing on feet akimbo with knees extended backwards. The player is declared out and loses the contest if any part of the body touches the stick or the pole that they are passing beneath, or if the hands touch the floor. When several players compete, they go under the stick in a single file. The stick is gradually lowered until only one player who has not touched either the pole or the floor remains. Popularity. As limbo spread out of Trinidad and Tobago to the wider world and the big screen, Limbo became a major part of the tourism package on several other Caribbean islands, such as Barbados and Jamaica. In Jamaica, the trendy limbo music of the 1950s was often based on a clave rhythm. It is also widely heard in Jamaican mento recorded in the 1950s in songs such as Limbo by Lord Tickler and the Calypsonians or Limbo by Denzel Lying and the Regulars, as well as many other songs not directly related to the limbo game itself. Limbo continued significance in Trinidadian and Tobagoan culture is clearly demonstrated in festivals and social events across the two islands, including performances by popular game troupes at the Prime Minister Best Village competition and during the carnival season in Trinidad and Tobago. When performing for tourists, professional limbo players often invite spectators to participate after their own presentation of the game. The massive popularity of limbo has emerged directly from this audience participation. In recent years, limbo has been conducted as a social icebreaker game for tourists at Caribbean and other tropical resorts. The winning player often receives a prize. World Records. The world record for lowest limbo game is held by Dennis Walston, who successfully attempted a 15-centimeter bar in March 1991. The world record for lowest female limbo game is held by Shamika Charles, a 26-year-old woman from Trinidad, on 16 September 2010. She successfully played under a bar 22 centimeters above the ground. Shamika Charles Cowbell also holds the second world record for the farthest distance limbo under 30 centimeters. The record-setting limbo was completed under vehicles and measured a distance of 3.8 meters. The record was attained on 9th October 2020 in her home country in Trinidad and Tobago. Now these are some of the popular subgenres of Calypso. Extempo, which is an improvised form of Calypso, may also be referred to as Calypso or it originated during the 1940s. Rapso is a form of Trinidadian music that grew out of the social unrest of the 1970s. Black power and unions grew at this time, and Rapso grew along with them. Rapso music itself is an evolution of the chantwell or growl tradition of African music in the diaspora. It is called the poetry of Calypso, and the power of the word and the rhythm of the word. Rapso is a poetic rap form of Trinbagonian music, the next evolutionary step of Calypso and soca music. It also has origins in the oral tradition elements of performances of traditional masquerade characters in Trinidad Carnival. Characters such as the Midnight Robber, Peregrinade, and the Chantwell each have particular forms of poetic and musical speeches that echoed ancient African masking and poetic traditions. Rapso borrowed many of the rhythmic and performance elements of these forms. Calypso influence on rap. Rapso is uniquely Trinidadian. It didn't have any influence from hip-hop neither dancehall. Instead, it may be Rapso which influenced such genres because of what currently exists in Calypso. The basic elements of hip-hop and boasting rap's rival poses, uptown showdowns, and political commentary were all present in Trinidadian music as long ago as the 1800s, though they did not reach the form of commercial recordings until the 1910s, 20s, and 30s. Calypso, like other forms of music, continued to evolve through the 1950s and 60s, When rocksteady, when rocksteady and reggae bands looked to make their music a form of national and even international black resistance, they took Calypso's example. Calypso itself, like Jamaican music, moved back and forth between the predominance of boasting and toasting songs, packed with slackness and sexual innuendo, and a more topical and political conscious style. Terminology. The term Rhapsody was not invented until 1980, when the Revolutionary Network Band, with its two chantwells, Brother Resistance and Brother Shortman, released Bursting Out. Initially dominated by the children of the Black Power movement, changes came in the 1990s with the younger artists adopting the art form, most significantly with the bands Kindred, Homefront, Tricanal, and Attackland. The first wave of Rhapsody music occurred with the invention of Rhapsody by its pioneer Lancelot Lane in 1970. He was the first man to perform Rhapsody. The first recording was Lavwey by him as well. The second wave occurred in 1976 with Cheryl Byron 6 years later, who is a founder of the New York City-based Something Positive dance company, and was scorned when she sang Rhapsody at a Calypso tent. She is now called the mother of Rhapsody, who was the first woman to perform Rhapsody in Calypso tents, and mushroomed in the early 1980s with the work of Brother Resistance and the Network Rhythm Band, alongside other artists such as Brother Catweo and Brother Buck. This wave mainstream Rhapsody music in Trinidad and Tobago and world music. The third wave of Rhapsody occurred with the advent of young groups including Kindred, Homefront, Boys in the Hood in the early 1990s. They were part of a musical movement entitled Kiskidi Caravan that was led by a businessman, Robert Amaro, who invested his money in the unleashing of the young musical genius of Trinidad and Tobago. The caravan revolutionized Trinidad's music by taking traditional forms such as Rhapsody and giving it modern production and promotional methods to take the music to stadiums in the native Trinidad and Tobago. This opportunity uncovered many talents on the ground, created a series of anthemic musical singles. The song "This Trini Could Flow" by supergroup Kindred took Rhapsody into the 21st century and firmly entrenched the music as a form comparable to hip-hop and dancehall. Modern Rhapsody can be described today as a Trinbagonian equivalent of what is known as US rap music, as groups like Boys in the Hood and Key from Boys in the Hood produce and chant to beats and rhythms more heavily influenced by modern US hip-hop music culture fused with R&B and jazz, as opposed to the traditional roots Rhapsody with Calypso and soca music. Nonetheless, traditional Rhapsody continues to live on as supergroup Kindred Tricanal maintain the balance with the Rhapsody and Calypso influences, and Attackland as well. Maintain the balance with the Calypso, soca music influences. Soca was invented by Lord Shorty in 1971. He wanted to create a type of music to unite African and Indians. Apparently, he also wanted to highlight the versatility of Calypso. Soca was initially made by fusing Calypso and Chutney. Later on, he decided to use African drumming and classical Indian music. Soca is a fast-tempo version of Calypso, which usually focuses on dancing. During 1977, Lord Shorty decided to change his name to Ras Shorty. He came up with another version of soca called Jamu, which is the gospel of soca. He wanted to highlight that soca is not just used for dancing, but could also be used for praising as well, and focusing on the mind and meditation. Bhojpuri also have Chutney. It is a fusion of Bhojpuri, folk music, what was the Indian folk music, but was later fused with Calypso and soca and filmy music. It originated during the 1940s. It was also originally based on Hindustani as well. Parang music, it have instruments, it have different genres in it like Churupo, Chuta, and Calypso. Originated during the 1950s, but it was not originally just Christmas music. Pop music, which I like to call imitation Calypso, got elements from Calypso such as similar instruments originally, especially from 1920s to 1950s, and then later changed to adding more electronic songs instead. It have some similar lyrics. It have Congo rhythm, it have the Cowbell strum and postmark strum, which originated during the 1920s, and it was what was originally called traditional pop or classic pop music. Pop rock, which is a fusion of imitation Calypso traditional pop music, which is combined with rock and roll, originated during 1954. Pop music originated during 1955 is a mixture of traditional pop music, rock and roll, and electronic music as well too. Originated during 1955. Mento, which is a combination of Calypso and Kumina music. It originated in Jamaica during the 1940s. Calypso, Mento, and jazz, plus New Orleans rhythm and blues, which forms ska, which originated during the late 1950s. Rocksteady was invented by Nerlin Tate from San Fernando, Trinidad in 1966. He wanted to create a slow genre of music for Jamaica because the local genres was too fast. He used genres like Calypso, Mento, ska, soul and R&B. to create rocksteady, which happened in 1966. Even though reggae does have influence of Nyabingi and jazz, the term reggae came about as a means to discredit Merlin Tate because he was from Trinidad and Tobago. The term reggae came about in 1968. Rocksteady and reggae can also be referred to as guitar calypso. Because of Merlin Tate's invention, subgenres such as dub music came about, which is an electric version of calypso, and genres such as dancehall and hip-hop came about as well, both of which is based on bass and rap, even reggaeton as well, and other subgenres. Rocksteady and reggae, plus electronic music and ska, you get dub music, which originated during 1969, which is another version of electronic calypso. Dub music and extempo or freestyling, which is also called toasting. You get dancehall, which originated during the 1970s. Electronic and DJ, beatboxing, which is also called vocables, spoken word, dub, disco, jazz, soul and R&B. You get hip-hop, which originated during the 1970s as well. Pop music, which I like to call imitation calypso, plus soul and funk. You get disco, which originated during 1960s, late 1960s, which is another version of electronic calypso. R&B, rhythm and blues plus soul, pop or imitation calypso, plus funk and hip hop and electronic music. You get contemporary R&B, which originated during the 1980s, which can also be called calypso blues. Calypso, ska, and sea shanties and spiritual and hymns. This is called spooge, originated during the late 1960s in Barbados by Cowbell. Calypso, Candice Rumpa, jazz and blues. This is called Cadence Calypso, originated in the Dominica, Guadeloupe during the early 1970s. Many of the Latin diaspora have been influenced by calypso, including salsa, samba, merengue, rumba, bachata, mambo, and palo, etc. These can also be referred to as fusion genres of calypso. Some of them is on this list. We have Latin Calypso, which is a fusion genres which have influence reggaeton. Reggaeton. Reggaeton itself is a combination of calypso, dembow, soca, pop or imitation calypso, freestyle or extempo, reggae in Espanol, dancehall, contemporary R&B. So basically it's just a different Latin versions of different genres, which can be referred to as reggaeton. It originated during the late 1980s, early 1990s, in Panama and Puerto Rico. But it can obviously be referred to as Latin Calypso as well. You have Afrobeat, which is a combination of Calypso, highlife, funk, jazz, soul, and Fuji. It originated during the 1960s in Nigeria by Fela Kuti. Then we have Afrobeat, soca, dancehall, hip-hop, hip-life, hip-hop, K-pan logo, juju, Ndamdu, palm wine, contemporary R&B and house. This is called Afrobeats. It originated during the 2000s in Ghana and Nigeria. Then it have other genres which I mentioned before, like Asian pop music, which is just different variations. And you could see the same thing for the different genres like hip hop, R&B. All of these might have different Asian versions of it as well too. And it's also the same thing for Mediterranean pop music. Yeah. These are some of the pioneers of Steelpan. Eddie Manette innovated the modern steel drum with a carved shape to accommodate more notes, known as the father of the modern steelpan, and spread steelpan making and tuning worldwide, especially to the US. Invented in fader lead on soprano pitch, double second alto pitch, quad duet, baritone pitch, triple guitar, baritone pitch cello, baritone pitch tenor bass, six bass. Winston Spree Simon credited with developing the ping pong, the precursor to the tenor pan, which is in soprano pitch, known for showcasing the instrument's musical possibilities through local and international performances. Anthony Williams, a pioneer who, along with Manette and Marshall, pushed the steelpan and its instruments to new levels during the 1950s, invented spiderweb lead on soprano pitch. Bertie Marshall, an innovator who further developed the steelpan and instruments in the 1950s. Neville Drews, another key figure in the innovative advancements of the steelpan in the 1950s. Andrew Beddoe, an accomplished drummer who transitioned his skills from traditional African drums to biscuit tins, contributing to the early development of steelpans. Rudolph Charles, a prominent figure in the development of the steelpan, invented quadraphonic 4 pounds. On tenor, pitch 9 bass, which is bass 12 bass. Alan O'Connor, a pioneer introducing Steelpan to US schools and universities, establishing the first actively performing university Steelpan in North Illinois University. Trenton Francis invented double guitar and tenor. Alright, so the basic thing I was trying to explain in this video is that when you have certain instruments in Kaiso or Calypso, you get songs, and when you have songs you could create rhythms, and with the rhythms now you could create different types of moods, different types of styles of Calypso, and with that you could add also, to improve it, you could add singing and rapping styles, and with that you could create different types of topics as well too, relating to how people feel, and with that now you could get different genres that you could combine with, right, and also the sub-genres as well too. So next time I'll touch more on what caused Calypso to be the way that it is and how people view it and what we could do to change it.